Sometimes we find a city and have to use myths or legends to figure out the true history. Sometimes we have the myths and go hunting for a place to see if it exists. In the case of the lost city of Irem, it's a relatively unique case of a mixture of both. For over 1,000 years, the rumors of the lost city in the desert have caused people to wonder. Many people wondered how much was true versus how much was myth. There are tantalizing glimpses of the city in mythology and archaeology. We're going to start with what we know. Then we will see what we can tease out of the data to make sense of it. The mythology alone is enough to make you think of spices, sand, and will capture your imagination. The archaeology was full of adventure, difficulties, and danger. Even today, the terrain is daunting, but for many years, it would have been impossible to think of anything like a dig given the lack of water. In Saudi Arabia, nestled in empty quarter, there was a city that is now known by various names such as Irem, Ubar, Wabar, Irem of the Pillars, or even the Atlantis of the Sands. Although the names change, the story remains the same. Much of it remains a mystery, because even today, archaeology in the empty quarter is difficult to say the least. However, let's start by taking a quick look at the empty quarter and then move on to what we know of the city. The empty quarter, or Rub al-Khali. It is the largest sand desert in the world. It spreads out over 650,000 square kilometers over much of Saudi Arabia, Oman, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen, and it is part of the largest Arabian desert. The ever-shifting sands can reach over 250 meters in height. It is the third driest place on the planet, as well, with less than 16 millimeters of rain a year. In recent years, satellites have shown us geoglyphs that are 9,000 years old, which are some of the oldest on Earth. As always, these glyphs are a mystery, since no one knows their purpose and since they can only be seen from above. So far, no one has an explanation for what purpose they serve. Are they some kind of attempt to contact aliens? Were they part of an unknown Neolithic religion? Satellites have also shown us a network of low walls throughout the Arabian Peninsula and what they are also in Jordan. What purpose could these serve since they are too short to be related to agriculture? Could they be related to the ancient trade routes? Much like the geoglyphs, it is a mystery. Now onto the city of Irem. The story of Irem traces its origins back to the Quran. In chapter 89, it is stated, "Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Irem, who had lofty pillars, the likes of whom had never been created in the land?" The story goes that King Shaddad built the city. He was descended from Noah, and unlike his forefather, he grew greedy and corrupt. He forced the prophet Hud to tell him when Allah was dissatisfied. However, he didn't listen, and thus the city was subjected to a sandstorm that lasted 8 days. In Islamic tradition, Irem was filled with massive buildings and pillars which reached the heavens. The city is also associated with idolatry, corruption, and the Djinn. Allah decided to destroy the city because it was filled with corruption. Other stories say that the people living there were giants who were descendants from Noah and who had great strength. Which brings us to mind the stories of the Watchers and the Nephilim, doesn't it? What also comes to mind is the Tower of Babylon and its destruction, which we discussed in some previous videos, since it implies a city destroyed much like God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. One of the earliest mentions of the city outside of the Quran comes the Islamic scholar and great traveler al-Masadi, who dates from the 10th century. He claimed to have visited Irem and described it as filled with riches. Unfortunately, he didn't go too far as to leave us a map of where to find this city. Although if you want a picture of the world at this time, you could do worse than to read him. For 900 plus years, here's where our story ends. But still, people heard the stories and still imagined the lost city of the sands. Fast forward to the 20th century. Although mentioned in the works of H.P. Lovecraft and also in other books such as Secret Societies by Philip Gardner and Bob Kearns, Lost Lands, Forgotten Realms, Lovecraft portrays the city as a place linked to Cthulhu, which means menacing evil and death. While the book Lost Lands, Forgotten Realms links the city with the Watchers, there are still some people who insist there was something more to the stories of Lovecraft and see more to the link in the stories that associate this city with corruption. In 1948, a geological team from Patrol Development Limited was exploring the empty quarter and came across a low wall and a cave near Shizr. Although they made a note of the find, yet again they didn't leave us a map. However, what an interesting find. This just fueled more speculation, although it would take slightly more than 20 years for anything concrete to be found. Finally, in 1973, there seemed to be an outside confirmation that the city had existed at one time. Archaeologists in Syria found a huge collection of texts from the ancient city of Elba, which dated from 2500 to 2250 BCE. These tablets seem to confirm there was once a place known as Irem. Suddenly, it didn't seem that there was more to it than just legends. However, no one knew where it could possibly be. Then in the 1990s, technology took a leap forward, and in 1992, a discovery identified the location of a city in the empty quarter. Could it be Irem? Located in Amman, near the border of Yemen, it showed a system of irrigation and agriculture. An amateur archaeologist named Nicholas Clapp led an excavation to the site. What did he discover? Here's how the New York Times described the find. Guided by ancient maps and sharp-eyed surveys from space, archaeologists and explorers have discovered a lost city deep in the sands of Arabia, and they are virtually sure it's Ubar, the fabled entrepreneur of the rich frankincense trade thousands of years ago. He discovered a mysterious octagonal fortress with spires. Thus, it didn't quite match what people had expected to find. So, there were still some people who were skeptical. However, it was clear that was a city that was connected to the outside world through the trade routes, so it being rich in spices was a very likely possibility. However, this wasn't quite the degenerate city filled with mystery that people were expecting. The lost city of Irem has sparked the imagination for centuries, and truthfully, any real city would likely have been a disappointment. Currently, opinion still is varied amongst archaeologists. Eventually, maybe, we will know more. So where does this leave us? Although it has been a city of mystery for over 1,000 years, there is still much to be discovered. The mythological religious component is also linked to so many other interesting topics. Why would it be linked to the children of Noah? He was someone who has been speculated was also a Nephilim himself. Now we know that Nephilim have long been linked with corruption, chaos, and forbidden knowledge. So the offspring of Noah may very well have been giants and known how to survive in such an environment. Spices could account for the riches. Satellite imagery shows that it was tied to the trade routes, and we know from the stories they've been passed down about Petra that it could lead to riches. Interesting about those low walls being throughout Arabia and Jordan, which was also linked to the spice trade through Petra. Since those low walls aren't seen elsewhere, it makes one think. Although we can't know for sure, that can't be entirely coincidence, can it? This city, much like Troy, shows how much there is to be found in myths and legends. They aren't all just stories. Sometimes they are best sources of finding the truth. If you like what we do, support us by subscribing to the channel.